Hello, and welcome to some Dodge family history. This is where I present information and research on my ancestors who served in the military during the early 20th century. Today, I will be presenting on additional military records that are available for Second Lieutenant Berenice Elizabeth Newitt of the Army Nurse Corps that supplement her 201 file. In doing family history research for Berenice Newitt, I have found additional records that are a great supplement to her 201 file. These additional records help paint a more complete picture of her military service. These records include enlisted and officer muster and roster rolls from Family Search, U.S. Army Transport Service passenger lists from Ancestry, U.S. morning reports from Fold 3, U.S. military registers from Fold 3 and Ancestry, newspaper articles found on newspapers.com, and entries in nursing journals, primarily the American Journal of Nursing. The first record we will look at is the enlisted and officer muster and roster rolls that are found on Family Search. This series of records was first published on Family Search in 2019, and as of June of 2022, more than 98.5 million names have been indexed. When this series of records was being indexed on Family Search, I was lucky enough to index several of these records that included Berenice during her time at Letterman General Hospital. As I mentioned in another presentation, this series of records is taken from microfilm images that are housed at the National Archives in St. Louis. The quality of these images does vary as to readability due to the care, or lack of care, that was taken when these records were microfilmed. In looking for Berenice in this set of records, I was able to find each of the monthly reports from October 1925 through July of 1937. The monthly reports from Fitzsimmons General Hospital did not include the Army Nurse Corps until 1926. It appears that the monthly rosters of the Army Nurse Corps were maintained separately from the monthly rosters of other commissioned officers until the early to mid-1920s. The National Archives in St. Louis does have a record series entitled Returns of the Nurse Corps 1917 to 1921. I submitted a request for copies of this series of returns for Berenice at Fitzsimmons General Hospital in December of 2022, but it will be some time before I receive any resolution to this request. Let's go ahead and look at a few of the returns. The first return we will look at is from October of 1925, when Berenice was transferred to Letterman General Hospital. It states that she joined by transfer on October 19, 1925. Berenice is listed twice in the returns for March of 1926. It was in this month that she was relieved from duty as reserve nurse and appointed as nurse. At the end of each monthly roster, there is a column entitled Losses During the Month, listing each nurse that was transferred, relieved from duty, or otherwise reassigned during that month. The first roster from March of 1926 shows Berenice being relieved from duty as reserve nurse, while the second shows her appointment as nurse. The last roster shown here is for November of 1927, showing Berenice being transferred from Letterman General Hospital on November 2nd. Berenice is listed on a total of 3 monthly returns in November of 1927. In addition to being listed on the return for Letterman General Hospital, she is also listed on the return at Schofield Barracks, where she joined on November 8th. She is also listed on the return for the U.S. Army Transport St. Mihiel. The return for St. Mihiel is dated November 2nd, 1927, the date of sailing from San Francisco. Also, in case anyone is wondering, the TH next to Schofield Barracks stands for Territory of Hawaii, as Hawaii was a territory until statehood in 1959. Berenice was stationed at Schofield Barracks until July 1st, 1930, when she took a leave of absence. The returns from July through November of 1930 show her listed and accounted for, but indicate that she was on leave. The return for Schofield Barracks in November of 1930 indicate that she was assigned to Walter Reed General Hospital on November 6, 1930. However, as was discussed in the previous presentation, Berenice's assignment was changed to Fort Snelling, Minnesota. She was attached to Fort Snelling on November 6 and assigned there from Walter Reed on November 12. Now, Berenice is not listed on the monthly return for Walter Reed General Hospital in November of 1930 because she never arrived there. The returns for Berenice Newitt in December of 1931, October 1932, and May of 1934 all indicate that she was on leave. And if you notice, the return for December 1931 misspells her last name as Newitt instead of Newitt. This is something to watch for, as records are only as accurate as the people who kept them. The monthly return from March of 1935 indicates that she was sick in quarters on the 4th, 5th, and 20th of the month, and sick in hospital from the 6th through the 19th. The returns for August and September of 1935 indicate that she was on leave, and October 1935 shows that she was transferred back to Letterman General Hospital, with October 24th listed as the date of transfer. The return for Letterman General Hospital for October 1935 shows that she joined for duty on October 23rd. The returns from April through July of 1937 indicate that Berenice was on her final leave of absence awaiting her retirement. This was following her appearing before a retirement board and being found incapacitated for military service due to defective hearing. The last return from July of 1937 lists her under losses and states that her retirement date was July 31st, 1937. As a side note, I was fortunate enough to index this last image from July of 1937 in Family Search. The next record that we will look at is the U.S. Army transport lists that are found on Ancestry. Each transport list contains the names of those that are traveling aboard the transport ship, the ship name, and the date and place of departure or arrival. There are two transport lists for Berenice aboard the St. Mihiel from November of 1927. The first one showing her departure from San Francisco, and the second one showing her arrival at Hawaii. Each list also lists her rank and organization that she belonged to. The transport list from 1930, when she returned to the States, shown at the right, shows much of that same information. In the next series of records, the morning reports, I was only able to find Berenice during her time at Fort Snelling. In this series of morning reports, there was a supplemental section to record the daily activities and changes for the nurses that were assigned to each station. This supplemental section records Berenice's activities at Fort Snelling, including her arrival, leaves of absence, hospitalization in March of 1935, and her transfer to Letterman General Hospital in October of 1935. Pictured here are the morning reports from November of 1930 and March of 1935. The return for 1930 reads November 12th, 2nd Lieutenant Newitt, Army Nurse Corps, leave to attached, 6th. 2nd Lieutenant Newitt, Army Nurse Corps, Walter Reed General Hospital, from attached to assigned and joined. The next supplemental record is the U.S. Military Registers. The U.S. Military Registers is a compiled register of each retired commissioned officer that was published semi-annually from 1934 through 1941 and annually from 1942 onward. Berenice is listed in the semi-annual registers from October of 1938 through April of 1941, listing her name, rank, organization, service number, date of retirement, and address. The reason Berenice is listed beginning in 1938 is because she had 1 year from the date of retirement to proceed to her home. Berenice lived in San Francisco through 1939 and moved to Glendale, California in 1940. The annual registers did not list Army Nurse Corps personnel until 1952. From 1952 onward, Berenice is listed in each annual register until she passed away in 1982. The last register that is presently available online is 1972. And if you notice, the code D8 on the 1952 and 1963 registers, this is a code that indicates that Berenice was medically retired. The next series of records that is available are online newspaper databases such as newspapers.com, Genealogy Bank, and other historical newspaper websites. Newspapers.com is a great resource for genealogy research, as I have found several newspaper articles for Berenice and her military service on this website. The first newspaper article I found is from the Oakland Tribune, dated January 14, 1926, entitled Army Hospital Nurse Averts Fire Panic. The article reads, Miss Berenice Newitt, nurse, today averted a panic among 75 patients in a ward at Letterman General Hospital, Presidio, when fire broke out. The patients, all veterans, struggled to escape, but Miss Newitt quieted them while the hospital brigade extinguished the flames. The fire started when a kettle of molten wax boiled over a gas stove, scattering the combustible material over the walls and starting blazes in a dozen spots. I found a total of 15 newspaper articles in various California newspapers documenting this event, including one in Italian that was published in San Francisco. The newspapers from Minneapolis are an excellent record of the goings-on at Fort Snelling. The newspaper, the Minneapolis Journal, dated August 7, 1932, reads, "The recently remodeled home of Mrs. Valen Messimer, Edith Shoemaker, Mary Callender, Berenice Newitt, Lucille Anderson, and Minnie Velo of the Army Nurse Corps was the incentive for a housewarming party on Thursday evening, when Miss Messner and the other members of the Army Nurse Corps were hostesses at dinner and bridge." The newspaper, the Star Tribune, also published a similar article about the new barracks for the Army nurses. These newspapers also noted Bernice's leaves of absence and where she went on each leave. The last series of additional records I want to look at are the nursing journals. I was surprised to find notices of Bernice's assignments and transfers throughout her military career in these journals. The primary nursing journals that I found were the American Journal of Nursing and the Trained Nurse and Hospital Review. Each of these nursing journals provides mention of Bernice's assignments and transfers, as well as notice of her retirement. I found many of these mentions of Bernice by doing a Google search for Berenice Newitt by using variations on the spelling of her name. These mentions, pictured here, are all found in the American Journal of Nursing. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation and found it informative. Along with her 201 file, there are many additional records that provide additional information and give additional insight into Bernice's military career. I am preparing additional presentations that focus on another one of my ancestors who served in the Army during the early 20th century. His name was David Newitt. He served in the Army from 1904 to 1931. His 201 file was one of the millions of files destroyed in the 1973 National Archives fire. However, there are many supplemental records housed at the National Archives in both Washington, D.C. and St. Louis that piece together the story of his military career that I will be sharing. Thank you.